Look, if it's one thing that I have learned in the past year of my life in working with people and strengthening others and strengthening relationships with others, it's get curious. I have noticed that in most of my adult life, and most of my life probably up until that point, was that I had to prove to the world that I was knowledgeable and that I was an expert in whatever area that I was in. So I didn't ask questions. I didn't show that I wanted to know more about a certain area because I already knew it, and that was the facade I was putting on. So as a young person coming up in the workplace, what did I do whenever I felt stuck? Did I ask questions? No, I was like, well, I better dig deep and figure this out because it's up to me now. And if I ask any questions, then they're going to think that they hired the wrong person and that all my future promotions are going to be, thrown to the wind, and I'm not going to be seen as an expert and as a professional person. So I better figure it out before they come back around and ask me if I got it done. And yeah, let's get honest about promotions. We feel like asking questions is going to ruin our opportunity for higher level growth and getting further in our careers. And what we have found is that that's not the case. It's actually the people who are demonstrating curiosity about someone else and about how things work and how things get done. Those are the people who are moving up and moving forward, right? Those are the people who are curious about how things have worked before they arrived. They're curious about that because they want to take that information and they want to make it better instead of just coming in and completely obliterating the system that was already there and making a culture shock and a shock to the system. And they come in saying that I know best instead of asking questions. And so then they end up frustrated because nobody wants to come along with them and they wonder why. And if you think that I'm going to leave personal relationships out of this episode, then you better just turn it off because I'm going there. We get into relationships and we're curious about each other in the beginning, right? Like we go on dates and we ask questions and we do new things together. And then all of a sudden years go by and now it's a little stagnant and stale. And then we're wondering what happened. And then we don't talk to each other about it. We don't ask each other questions. And then one day it's gone. The relationship is severed and it can't be repaired because you've gone too long assuming the other one was thinking a certain way and behaving in a certain way, and you weren't talking to each other about it and you weren't asking questions. And we think it's the end of the world. We think that we can't get anything back. Like I said, you think that everything is completely, severed and cannot be salvaged. And we just think that all hope is lost. And that goes for the working world, and that goes for our relationships, and it goes for relationships with ourselves too. And we forget that how we built the relationships at work or in our love life or our friendships and with ourselves, we forget that they started with a place of curiosity. And we skip that step altogether. And this is why I have to bring this up in this podcast episode. It is episode 3. And if I could have made it episode 1, I would have, because it's the most important lesson I've learned as of late. So I want to talk about things that are related to curiosity. What does it look like? And why is it important? And how does it help me? And these are the 3 things that we're going to cover in this episode today. So if you are ready to ditch those feelings of frustration and disconnectedness with the people around you and yourself, then let's dig in and figure this thing out together. First point I want to make about curiosity is it's not about you. I had to learn that really, really early on, is that this life and this purpose and this mission is not about me, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if you're in sales or if you're in nonprofit world or you're talking about your relationship or whatever it is. Like, it is not about you. So if you are asking questions of other people and actually it's like a hidden question that's actually about you, then you're doing it wrong. You can't ask questions that turn it around and really put the focus on you, because that person on the other end sees it for what it is. It's really trying to make the situation less about them, and that you're not being authentic in caring for them and how they feel and what they're thinking and where they're coming from. You're actually just trying to make yourself feel better. So what does it look like when you're asking questions that are more about you than about the person you're asking the question of? It is when you use the word I more than you use the words that are related to the other person. Like, how did you feel in this situation? And can you tell me what you did in this situation? Can you tell me more about how you operated in this way or that way? And when you flip it to say, how did I do? And what did you think about how I did in my performance in this situation? And how can I do something differently? And how can I? It drives me up the wall. When I figured it out that was not the way to be curious, and I was still asking questions of a person, sure, but I was asking questions that were about me, and I was asking that person more information about me. They didn't want to answer it, and they kind of got short, and they would give me answers that just weren't really helpful because it wasn't the right questions to ask. So to summarize all of that up, I get really passionate when I'm talking about this topic because it's so real to me right now, and I'm learning so much about it right now. But the first takeaway about curiosity is you got to ask questions. And sure, that's like a duh factor. We know we have to ask questions. But I want to take it a step further and remind you and point out that it is about the quality of the questions that you're asking. It is not about you. Make the questions that you're asking actually about the person who's sitting across from you or the group of people you're with or whatever meeting you're in. Ask the questions that put you aside and put the project and the goal and the mission and the relationship first. And it sounds easy when I'm talking about it on the podcast, but those moments that this comes up where it's really, really critical for you to be curious about whatever is in front of you and the people who are in front of you, it is an act of bravery to step into this place where you are not the most important thing in this moment, and realizing that is courageous. And then asking questions that put other people on pedestals or in the spotlight or give people validation or kind of credit for what they've put into this project or this relationship. When you do that for someone else, that is bravery. It's not easy. So the things that we're thinking about and talking about when we're talking about curiosity, it requires courage and bravery to get to this place. And I'm right there with you. This is something that I work on every day. These are my acts of courage and my acts of bravery that I'm putting into work in 2020. My goal is to be more curious about other people when it doesn't necessarily come back to me and make it about me. Okay, now that we've established that we are totally in this whole being curious and being brave about being curious together, we can start talking about how when we ask questions of other people, sure, maybe we've arrived to the point where we're asking the right question, but now we gotta listen to the answer. And I don't mean just like listening to the person who's sitting in front of you say words and kind of like nodding and like making eye contact, those are great things to be engaged in what someone's saying back to you when you've asked them a question, but it's actually allowing that person to take the conversation away from where you thought it was going and into a place where you never imagined it would go. This is why being curious and asking the right questions is so, so, so important, because you have this idea of where something will lead you. And when you allow for someone else to take you into a different level and like level up into a different part of a conversation and going into a different place where you never even thought possible, this is why curiosity is important for us to practice. So many times I've been sitting across from someone and I will ask them a question, and maybe it really was like an actual like decent question. And while they're answering, I'm already thinking about either A, something that I want to ask them next, like the real question I really want to get to, or B, my mind wanders into everything else I have to do, and like the visual stimulation starts to kick in and people walk by or people open the doors of a coffee shop, or like the sounds that I hear across the room, and like all the stuff is starting to distract me from what this person's saying to me, and I lose track and I lose focus. And then my answer back becomes not authentic and disgenuine, and I'm not able to be fully there for that person, which then completely limits the potential of this conversation that we're having. So being curious takes incredible amounts of focus and discipline and practice. You don't just hop out there and ask a question and you're really engaged and you're really like interacting with what someone's saying back to you. You have to get focused and understand the purpose of asking the question, why you're talking to the person who's in front of you. Like having clarity and focus around all of that will actually allow you to be more curious and more open to where you're going in the conversation, which that's the hardest part. Once you get to the point where you're like, okay, we're having this conversation and I think I know where we're going and I have clarity around this thing, but can you stay focused and actually listen to what someone is saying back to you? So why is all of this important? Why even have this episode? Even though it's brief, why are we talking about curiosity? Well, it is the way that you can engage with others to be more effective than you ever thought possible. You're going to get to things that you never thought were coming, and you're going to be able to do it because you've got this feeling of connectedness and purpose. And you can't have those things without utilizing the strengths and talents of other people, right? So you've got people in your life for a reason, and we cannot do this life alone. But the thing is about that is that you have to gain a curiosity practice to be able to bring those people closer to you and use their strengths and know them better and know where they're going to be useful in your life. And it's by not making it about you where you will reap the benefits of it later. And it's just such an important lesson that I have learned, and I'm so excited to share it here with you. The ways that you can put this into practice this week, and yes, it has to be practice. This is not something that you're just going to ace overnight just by listening to this podcast. This is something that is an ongoing conversation, and it just like anything else that you want to master, curiosity is a day-to-day, moment-to-moment practice. So what you will do is you can find people, look for opportunities to ask questions, right? So like it could be your inner circle at work, it could be your partner, it could be your siblings, it could be your parents, or whatever it is. It will come up and somebody's going to say something and you'll be able to ask the question of like, well, tell me more about that. And it's simple as that. And like actually listen to what they have to say next and then respond with another question of like, well, that's really interesting. Like, how did that even come about? And just go down the line of questioning. And I think that you'll find that it's simpler than it looks. It just has to be done over and over and over again. And the benefit of why this is important is that we all want to be known. We all want to share our experiences and we all need a space to do so. And by asking questions from an authentic place of actually want to know the answer and why it's important to that person, and that is what creates space for vulnerability to happen and this authentic relationship building to happen so that people then in turn become curious about you. If you ask the questions of someone else, your time will come because curiosity begets curiosity and it is contagious. Just like many other strengths in our lives, it is something that once you see it being done, then you want to do it in return. If there's any takeaway from this week's episode, it is that curiosity is a practice. It requires bravery and it requires focus and discipline. And it is something that if you ask questions of other people and you ask the right questions and you are truly curious about someone else, your time will come to talk about yourself and your lived experiences and the way that you've learned about life, because you won't have to fight for people to know you. If you go into a conversation wanting to know more about the other person who's sitting across from you, they're gonna want to do the same for you. And so if this podcast episode hit you anywhere in the feels, I want to know about it. If you follow my page on Instagram and on Facebook and you watch my stories, you know that I am just like dying to hear from you and engage with you and know what it is that you're facing right now, because most likely I am too. So we can talk about it and I'm going to give you the real deal, authentic, real life answers that I've got. And I want you to give me some tips and some tricks too. So hit me up. It's at Moving Bravely on Instagram, and you can search Moving Bravely on Facebook. And I am so excited to talk with you about whatever is going on in your life, because what you've got going on is going to drive the content on my pages and also here on the podcast. So I want to hear from you so that way this content actually serves you better. So can't wait to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to try to keep these to under 20 minutes just so that they are things that you can listen to on your commute and that they are short little tips and mindset shifts to attack your day in a place of bravery. So here for you. Let me know what you want to hear from me in the Moving Bravely movement, and we'll see you next week.